I have served in Washington on multiple occasions under Democratic and Republican presidents. I've never seen Washington so out of touch and out of control. And the founders understood that that could happen. And that's why they put in Article 5, where the states would reassert themselves and would do things that Congress should do, but for one reason or another, they failed to do. And therefore, the ultimate power goes back to the people through state legislatures. So let me, if I can now, turn to the fiscal issue, but let me, before I do, say the leading indicator on the rise up to become a superpower and the decline from being a superpower throughout history has been economic power. And if you don't put your finances in order, you will not maintain economic power. The United States is not exempt from the laws of prudent finance. The American people understand that. You can't spend more money than you make, charge the credit card to an unlimited fashion without having some day of reckoning. That's just a fact. And countries are different than individuals and families, but they're not exempt from those basic facts. So let's go, if we can, to the first slide. I've got it. Now, people talk about deficits. People talk about debt. That's not really the right metrics. What we need to be focused on is debt as a percentage of the economy and how much interest we are paying as a percentage of the budget. Those are the two things that matter. Not how much debt, not how much interest, but how much debt as a percentage of the economy and how much interest as a percentage of the budget. I could take this back to 1789. This only goes from 1900. Let me give you the bottom line. Until World War II, the United States never had public debt to GDP more than 35 to 40%. Never. During any war that we had, whether it's external or internal, during the Great Depression, we never had public debt to GDP over 35 to 40%. World War II was the exception. It was the exception because we were betting the ranch. We saved the free world. We defeated the Axis powers. We avoided attack on our homeland. We prevailed. And after World War II, we restored fiscal sanity. We invested in infrastructure and human capital. We grew the economy much faster than the debt. We didn't pay down the debt. We grew the denominator, debt to GDP, faster than the numerator, and debt to GDP plummeted to around 35 to 40% by 1980. We ended up incurring more debt, in part to be able to bankrupt the Soviet Union. We lost our way. We restored it. We actually paid down debt for 2 years, had surpluses for 4 years. But there are 2 years here that I want to mention to you. 1912. 3 things happened in 1912 that expanded the size of government, undercut states' rights. Income tax, Federal Reserve, and in addition to that, the direct election of senators rather than appointment by state legislatures and undercut state rights. 2003, 3 things happened that convinced me that things were out of control. Second round of tax cuts, debt financed. Invaded a sovereign nation without declaring war, debt financed. Expansion of Medicare to include prescription drugs, added $8 trillion in new unfunded obligations when Medicare was already underfunded. $19 trillion. Let's go to, I've got it, I'm sorry, to the next slide. And what's the future look like? By the way, both these graphics are before the latest COVID-19 legislation, which is about a couple of $1 trillion, not counting the stuff that they're talking about now. What are we going to be spending money for in the future based on the Congressional Budget Office? This is before the latest COVID legislation. Interest. And what do you get for interest? Nothing. Or as we say in the South, shinola. And what about the numbers? Well, let me tell you about some of the numbers for the federal government. Debt held by the public, this is as of September 30, 2020, which is the end of the fiscal year. 21 trillion. Well, we had another 6 trillion that we owed to Social Security and Medicare and some other trust funds. That's not even on the balance sheet. You can't find it on the balance sheet. So total debt subject to the debt ceiling, which has been suspended for a few more days, 27.1 trillion. Total pension retiree healthcare obligations, 9.4 trillion. Other commitments and contingencies, 0.1 trillion. Unfunded Social Security and Medicare obligations, 65.5 trillion. The real number is not 21 trillion. It's not 28 trillion. It's $102 trillion. And what's the size of the economy? About $22 trillion. Divide that by 330 million people and see what you get. By the way, not all those 330 million pay taxes. All right. This is the Federal Reserve. They're holding the Federal Reserve rate down at extraordinarily low levels in order to be able to help the government deal with its debt. It has expanded its balance sheet dramatically. It's buying most of the new debt in order to hold interest rates down. It is basically self-dealing with U.S. debt, and it is enabling fiscally irresponsible policies that punish savers and benefit investors. And what about the states? The 5 best states in the country financially, Utah's number 4. Congratulations, Utah. I hope most of you are from the top 5 states. The bottom 5 states, you can figure out what the common denominators are between the leadership in the top 5 states and the bottom 5 states. And bad news flows downhill. There's something called gravity. If we don't solve this problem, 3 things are going to happen. Federal taxes are going to go up significantly, and the longer we wait, the higher they're going to go. There'll be fewer state and local grants, and there'll be more unfunded mandates. You think the federal government's going to stand back and say, okay, we're done, we're going to let you do everything? No, they're still going to want you to do things. They're just not going to pay for it. There are other things that have to be done, which I'll come back to a little bit later, because I have my other colleagues that want to talk, which is the way forward. What are the things that we need to do in order to create a better future? I'm going to be back up a little bit later today, but hopefully I've convinced you that we are on a burning platform. The status quo is unacceptable and unsustainable. Our country and our family's future is at risk. You need to be part of the solution. We can either conform, we can quit, or we can fight. And I've chosen to fight. Thank you very much.